Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Los Angeles Wash Process Colombia from Parlor Coffee. And there's the box right there. And Parlor, based out of Brooklyn, New York. And this coffee was a gift from my good buddy Greg, so shout out to and thank you to Greg for the coffee. This is Parlor's second time appearing on this channel, having previously reviewed one of their coffees when we were out in Brooklyn, New York at Odd Fox Coffee Shop. And that's the only coffee shop I knew of in the area that regularly carries Parlor's coffees, with the exception, of course, of their roastery, which has very limited hours and was not open during the time I was in Brooklyn. This is a coffee roaster I do have pretty extensive familiarity with, however, as there was a coffee shop in Denver that served a lot of East Coast coffee roasters, and as a result I got very familiar with Parlor's coffees, and they became a coffee roaster that I very much wanted to review on this channel for a very long time. And I had a lot of requests from people to review this coffee roaster, so we finally have the opportunity to do so, and I'm looking forward to it, as this right here is day 26 of this coffee. And recipe we settled on for this coffee was a 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and I definitely like this one best through the V60, which would indicate a more medium fine grind. Roast profile for this coffee, especially drinking it alongside some really light things, you can definitely tell that it's a little bit more developed, so I will call this a medium light, slightly on the more medium side of that medium light American for the roast profile. With those things out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 11, first impression, and it was actually a really nice first impression as the coffee was skewing heavily towards the stone fruit aspect of it, especially a peachiness. Fair bit of that in abundance, more so than anticipated, and it's complemented nicely by plenty of brown candy. So we were already off to a positive start. Those are two factors I very much enjoy in coffees, so we continue. Day 13, ran it through the Chemex, and it comes out a little bit more generic, bright stone fruit as opposed to maybe something a little bit more specific as the peachiness had been on the first day. And it had a fair bit of this slightly floral honey, and there was somewhat of a more bright and heavy brown candy to the cup of coffee. I didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much in the Chemex, and I think even from that first impression I could kind of tell that it wasn't necessarily the same, as the more defined peachy characteristic was just a little bit more generic on this day through this brew method. So we continued on to day 15 and increased the temperatures, and I noticed very quickly that that was actually the wrong direction to go with this coffee, as a lot of the fruitiness seemed to be overpowered by the more robust aspects of the cup. Of course, that's going to be the roastiness that was coming from it. A little bit more earthy in general, skewing a bit more towards the South American characteristics, and I definitely knew I needed to adjust. Day 17 was struggling a little bit with this coffee, and I think it's because I made that error of adjusting it high. It's really interesting because that first day I brewed it at 205. I start off every coffee at 205, even the ones with already set brew guides, just so I can kind of get my own impression from my standard recipe to it. And going back to 205 didn't necessarily help this coffee. I felt I needed to go even lower than that, so I can't explain why the first day was so much better than the days that followed when done with the same recipe. But it continued to come out robust at these moderate temperatures. A lot of the stone fruits from the earlier days were more subdued in place of a more robust chocolate, so wasn't enjoying day 17 as much. And on day 18 we lowered the temperatures, ran it through the V60, and it became very evident that this coffee is best through the V60 at those lower temperatures. I was feeling a lot more of the stone fruits, very much akin to the first time I'd experienced this coffee. Plenty of wonderful brown candy sweetness yet again, and was going to continue with this brew method going forward. Day 21, same recipe, feeling a little bit more of that robust chocolate, but the most dominant characteristic is certainly the caramel brown candy sweetness, and my goal was to maybe try to replicate and continue to have the peachy sweetness that I was experiencing from the first day, but it became pretty clear that that was going to be the secondary factor to the pretty defined brown candy sweetness. Day 23, same recipe, another better day. Cup seems to have settled as there's a fair amount of sweetness, fair bit of sugary stone fruits, and we've seen a lot of consistency since we made the adjustments, and I genuinely feel that this is the best experience I was going to be able to get from this coffee, so I really liked the way we settled on it. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. And for level 4s, let's go through those real quick. The finish level 4 has a bit of a lasting finish to it, but it's not overpowering, and I actually quite like it on there. Pretty sugary finish. Also has a little bit of that roastiness even with the temperatures lowered down as much as they have been. Sweetness level 4, I know that's a slight bit generous. It's probably on the higher side of the level 3, but given that the two dominant factors in this coffee are very sweet factors, of course the brown candied sweetness as well as the stone fruit sweetness, then I feel like it merits that even if it is on the slightly lower side of the level 4 mark. Caramel, level 4, most defined characteristic. I can't remember if they have butterscotch or caramel listed on here. I think it's butterscotch. Regardless, it is a brown candied sweetness, by far the most dominant and abundant thing in this cup of coffee, so I definitely feel like it's justified at that mark. Body, level 4. Yeah, I mean, that's very much to be expected. We have a South American coffee and we brewed it through the V60, so it's definitely going to be on the higher side of those things. Even if we did dilute the coffee down all the way at a 16.67 to 1, it still has a lot of those heavy body characteristics to it. A bunch of level 3s, so the stone fruit level 3, second most pronounced characteristic to this cup of coffee, so definitely justified at that mark. Chocolate was getting a fair bit of chocolate, especially with more time in this coffee, so I think that's justified there. Smokiness level 3, that's an interesting one. It's on the lower side of level 3, higher side of level 2, but I think I just kind of wanted to demonstrate that even if you just increase the temperatures a little bit more, you're going to be getting a lot more of the roastiness from this cup of coffee, and that's why I had to go really, really low on it. Cleanliness level 3, I think on this day I was experiencing a fair bit of cleanliness, so I would actually put that at the higher side of level 3. I'm okay with it actually being there because it could justify a level 4 mark, but I think, once again, slightly higher temperatures and it has to be bumped down to that level 3. And then the acidity, level 3, yeah, same thing as I've been saying with the other ones. I actually, when I'm looking back at this tasting wheel, I think I agree with it, even if it's a lot of in-betweens to a lot of what's in this tasting wheel. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I think it was a little difficult to drink this alongside of some really, really light coffees, as pretty much everything else I was drinking was significantly lighter than this coffee. And typically there's some niceness in having something that contrasts those coffees in general, but just really noticing how much of a contrast there was in this cup of coffee made it a little bit more tricky to drink it alongside of those things. However, I am a big fan of brown candy and peachiness, and my biggest grievance, I guess, was that I could not replicate that first day from that first day onwards, and I really wanted to get a lot more of that peachiness, but brown candy is still a great, primary aspect to a cup of coffee. I just feel like maybe I want some more sweetness, maybe I want a little bit more clarity, and I guess I'm just being really nitpicky with this coffee because it was a good coffee. I just don't think it was necessarily my preference when it comes to what I'm looking for in South American coffees overall. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to, if you do like that slightly more developed kind of light medium American profile, then I think that this one's a pretty good fit for you, especially if you do enjoy your body and you do enjoy some more robust characteristics in general. As this one had plenty of those in abundance, it's not going to be the overly light and delicate coffee in any sense. And it does have a fair bit of that brown candied sweetness that I really enjoy, and I know a lot of people enjoy as well. So keep those factors in mind, and I think this would be a pretty nice fit for you. But for the most part, I think I'll leave this review at that. If you've by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Los Angeles Wash Process Colombia from Parlor Coffee. Thank you for watching.